Imagine spending your entire childhood hearing the same sentence in different forms. We can't afford that. Not angrily, not dramatically, just as a quiet fact of life. You hear it when you ask for new shoes. You hear it when a school trip comes around. You hear it when your friends are doing something that costs money and you already know the answer before you even ask. And after a while, something strange happens. You stop wanting things. Or at least, you pretend to. Because wanting things starts to feel dangerous. Now imagine growing up, working relentlessly, taking risks, building something successful, and eventually becoming wealthier than you ever thought possible. Not comfortable. Not financially secure. I mean unimaginably wealthy. The kind of wealthy that removes every practical money problem from your life forever. Most people assume that would be the ending. The moment where all the anxiety disappears. The moment where you finally relax. The moment where the story resolves itself. But for many people who come from financial instability, that's not what happens at all. Because money can change your circumstances overnight. What it can't always change is the person those circumstances created. And sometimes the strangest part of becoming rich isn't buying bigger houses or flying on private jets. It's realizing that the version of you who grew up worried about money never actually left. I think most people misunderstand wealth. Not because they're uninformed. Because the way wealth is usually portrayed is incomplete. We often imagine money as a finish line, a destination, a magical point where all stress dissolves and life becomes simple. And to be fair, money does solve many real problems. Financial security matters. Being able to pay rent matters. Having healthcare matters. Being able to help your family matters. The absence of money creates pressures that are very real. But the presence of money doesn't automatically erase the psychological patterns built during years of uncertainty. Think about it this way. If someone spends 20 years learning that the world is unpredictable, that resources are scarce, and that security can disappear at any moment, why would their brain suddenly abandon those beliefs just because their bank account changed? The brain doesn't work like a software update. It works more like a survival machine. And survival lessons tend to stick, especially when they were learned early, especially when they were repeated thousands of times, especially when they were attached to emotions. That's why you'll occasionally hear stories about extremely wealthy people who still obsess over tiny expenses. People who can spend millions on a business acquisition but feel uncomfortable wasting $10. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it makes perfect sense. They're not responding to the present. They're responding to the past. And sometimes the past has a much louder voice than the numbers on a screen. Let's talk about something that rarely gets discussed. The engine. Many highly successful people describe having a kind of internal force that pushes them forward. A restlessness. A need to keep building. Keep improving. Keep achieving. At first glance, it looks like ambition. And sometimes it is. But underneath that ambition is often something much deeper. Imagine a child watching their parents work incredibly hard. Not lazy parents. Not irresponsible parents. Parents who genuinely try. Parents who wake up early. Parents who sacrifice. Parents who do everything society asks of them. And yet somehow, despite all that effort, they never seem to get ahead. The bills keep coming. The stress never leaves. The opportunities remain limited. The future feels predetermined. A child observing that environment learns lessons that aren't spoken aloud. One lesson might be this: if I want a different life, I can't stop. Another lesson might be, security can disappear. Or maybe, no one is coming to save us. Those beliefs can become incredibly powerful sources of motivation. They create extraordinary work ethic, extraordinary persistence, extraordinary resilience. But there's a hidden cost. The same engine that helps someone escape financial hardship often refuses to shut off once they've escaped. Because the engine was never designed for comfort. It was designed for survival. And survival systems don't easily recognize when the danger has passed. The person becomes successful, then very successful, then incredibly successful. Yet internally, they still feel behind. still feel urgency, still feel pressure, still feel like stopping would somehow be irresponsible. The goalpost keeps moving because the goal was never actually money. The goal was safety. And for many people, safety is not a number. It's a feeling that's much harder to achieve. One of the most unexpected consequences of extreme success is something almost nobody talks about. Distance. Not physical distance. Emotional distance. Let's imagine someone grows up in a family where everyone shares roughly the same reality. Everyone understands the same struggles. Everyone worries about similar things. Everyone operates within the same financial universe. Then one person leaves that universe entirely. Not slightly ahead. Not modestly successful. Completely transformed. Suddenly, their daily reality becomes difficult for their family to relate to. Their concerns change. Their opportunities change. Their responsibilities change. Even their definition of risk changes. What feels normal to them begins sounding absurd to the people they grew up with. And what feels normal to their family begins feeling increasingly foreign to them. Nobody intends for this to happen. Nobody wants it to happen. But it happens anyway. Because human connection often relies on shared experience. And eventually, the experiences stop being shared. Imagine trying to explain the pressures of managing a company worth billions to someone who's worried about making next month's rent. Neither concern is fake. Neither concern is invalid. But they exist in different worlds. The conversation becomes difficult, not because people stop loving each other, because they stop understanding each other. And understanding is often what makes people feel close. What's fascinating is that even after someone becomes enormously wealthy, the survivor version of themselves often remains active. You can see it in subtle ways. The person still checks prices automatically, still worries about economic downturns, still feels uncomfortable with waste, still experiences anxiety around uncertainty. Objectively, they are safe. Emotionally, they are preparing for danger. Psychologists sometimes talk about how formative experiences shape our mental models. A mental model is basically the lens through which we interpret reality. If scarcity was your normal environment, your brain may continue scanning for scarcity long after it disappears. It's similar to how someone who lived through a storm might keep checking the weather even on sunny days. The behavior isn't irrational. It's adaptive. It helped them survive. The problem is that survival strategies don't always know when they're no longer necessary. And because of that, success can create a strange contradiction. The richer someone becomes, the more obvious it becomes that money wasn't the entire problem. Money solved the practical challenges. But some of the emotional challenges were never really about money. They were about uncertainty, identity, belonging, fear, control. And those issues don't automatically disappear when wealth arrives. Now here's where the story becomes both beautiful and complicated. Because despite all the psychological challenges, wealth can do something extraordinary. It can change the trajectory of an entire family. Think about the concept of a ceiling. For many families, there's an invisible ceiling that limits opportunity. Not because anyone lacks talent, but because resources are limited. A child might have potential, but lack access. A parent might have dreams, but lack time. An entire generation might spend most of its energy simply staying afloat. Then one person breaks through, and something remarkable happens. The ceiling that constrained one generation becomes the floor beneath the next. Future children grow up with better education, more stability, more options, more time to explore who they are instead of constantly worrying about survival. The sacrifices of one generation become advantages for another. This is one of the most powerful aspects of wealth creation. Not luxury, not status, not consumption, optionality. The ability to create choices where previously there were none. The ability to remove certain forms of suffering from the people you love. The ability to let future generations start the race from a different position. And for many successful people, that's where they find meaning. Not in accumulating more, but in transforming what's possible. But every transformation comes with trade-offs. And sometimes the cost isn't obvious until much later. Let's return to the person who became extraordinarily wealthy. From the outside, it looks like they won. And in many ways, they did. Their family is secure. Their future is secure. Their opportunities are endless. Yet they occasionally experience something difficult to explain. A feeling that they no longer fully belong anywhere. They're no longer who they used to be. But they're not entirely comfortable with who they've become either. Their old friends may not relate to their current life. Their new peers may not understand where they came from. They exist somewhere in between. This experience isn't unique to wealth. It happens whenever people undergo major life transitions. But extreme wealth can amplify it dramatically. Because money changes more than circumstances. It changes environments, relationships, expectations, identity. And identity is one of the most emotionally significant things we possess. When identity shifts rapidly, people often experience loneliness even when surrounded by others. Not because they're physically alone, because they feel unseen. The people around them see the outcome. Very few people see the journey. I think one of the most important realizations in this entire conversation is understanding that success and healing are not the same thing. We often treat them as interchangeable, as if achievement automatically resolves emotional wounds, as if financial victory guarantees inner peace. But they're separate processes. Someone can build an incredible business and still carry childhood fears. Someone can become wealthy and still struggle with anxiety. Someone can achieve every external goal they ever imagined and still feel unresolved internally. This isn't failure. It's simply human. The mindset shift is recognizing that money is a tool, not a cure. A powerful tool, an important tool, but still just a tool. Money can buy freedom from certain problems. It cannot automatically rewrite decades of emotional conditioning. That work requires awareness, reflection, sometimes conversations that are uncomfortable, sometimes acknowledging that the younger version of yourself is still influencing decisions. And once you understand that, something interesting happens. You stop expecting wealth to provide emotional answers it was never designed to give. You stop chasing a number as if it's going to unlock a permanent state of peace. You start focusing on building both external security and internal stability. And those are very different goals. For most people watching this, the lesson isn't about becoming a billionaire. The lesson is about understanding your own relationship with money. Take a moment and think about the financial messages you absorbed growing up. Were you taught that money was always scarce? Were you taught that success required constant sacrifice? Were you taught that rest was laziness? Were you taught that security could disappear overnight? Whether those beliefs are true or not, they may still be shaping your decisions today. And simply noticing them can be powerful. You don't have to eliminate every fear. You don't have to become perfectly relaxed about money. You don't have to transform overnight. But you can start asking better questions. Am I making this decision based on today's reality or yesterday's fear? Am I working towards something meaningful? Or am I running from something old? Am I building security? Or am I chasing certainty? Because certainty is a destination nobody reaches. There will always be uncertainty. At every income level, in every stage of life, the goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty. The goal is to develop a healthier relationship with it. And sometimes that means allowing yourself to acknowledge progress, allowing yourself to recognize safety when it exists, allowing yourself to enjoy the life you've already built instead of constantly preparing for a disaster that may never arrive. Maybe that's the strange truth about money. The numbers matter. But the stories matter too. The stories we inherit. The stories we tell ourselves. The stories we carry long after our circumstances change. A person can escape poverty and still carry its emotional fingerprints. A person can become wealthy and still remember exactly what it felt like to be afraid. And perhaps that's not a weakness. Perhaps it's simply evidence of how deeply our experiences shape us. The goal isn't to erase where you came from. The goal is to understand it, to recognize how it influences your choices, to appreciate the strengths it gave you without becoming trapped by the fears it left behind. Because at the end of the day, money can change many things. It can create opportunities. It can provide security. It can open doors that once seemed permanently locked. But the quieter work is learning how to live after the door opens. Learning how to let go of survival mode when survival is no longer the mission. Learning how to build a future without constantly negotiating with the past. And maybe that's the real measure of success. Not the size of a bank account, not the number of achievements, but the ability to create a life that feels secure enough to be lived. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one small step at a time. Because progress has never required perfection, and it never will. Before you go, I want you to think about one question. What's one money belief you inherited from your family that you're not sure is actually true? Drop it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people are carrying the exact same belief without realizing it. And if videos like this help you think about money in a different way, not just the numbers, but the psychology behind them, subscribe to this channel. And if you found value in this conversation, leave a like. It helps more people discover these ideas and keeps these discussions going. I'll be reading through the comments, and honestly, I think some of the most interesting insights won't come from me. They'll come from your stories.